It's that time of year again. President's Day. Now, my President's Day special last year of ranking every president is my most popular video, as you can see. And it has my most active comment section. But nonetheless, we continue onwards. The history of the American presidency is a fascinating one, and one we shall continue to discuss today, as I vote in every single presidential election in American history from 1788 to 2020. The election of 1788. Of course, their only option is George Washington, so you're really just picking the vice president. And out of the many options for the Federalist vice president, I am going to go with John Jay. Big fan of John Jay. So, I'd vote George Washington first, John Jay second, mostly because I don't like John Adams. And that's pretty much it. Flash forward, bam, 1792. George Washington again. But who I want as his vice president? Let's see. Well, our options are John Adams and George Clinton. And again, I don't like John Adams. So, George Clinton it is. So, bada bing, bada boom. Next up, Thomas Jefferson versus John Adams. This is a tricky one because I don't like Thomas Jefferson or John Adams. But I do prefer Thomas Pinckney to Aaron Burr. So I would most likely vote Thomas Pinckney, mostly because he's a Federalist from a southern state, and he's way better than Aaron Burr because Aaron Burr committed treason. And personally, I'm not a big fan of treason. Now, here you go. A very important election. The election of 1800. Well, as much as the Hamilton song is really good, the election itself was a mess. You're not familiar with the actual history of this election outside of the Hamilton song. It mostly revolves around people insulting each other back and forth, particularly Thomas Jefferson and John Adams going back and forth. I think Thomas Jefferson called John Adams a hermaphrodite after John Adams called Thomas Jefferson a France lover. Until eventually John Adams guess what? Thomas Jefferson's dead, which is stupid. And if I were around in 1800 and I read that in the newspaper, I would not vote for John Adams because that is a stupid argument. So sadly, I have to vote for Tommy Jeffs in 1800. Now you go to 1804. Charles Pinckney, the brother of Thomas Pinckney, versus Tommy Jeffs. And I'm going with Charles Pinckney, finally, to support my favorite South Carolinians, part of the Federalist Party. Moving on, we got Charles Pinckney versus J.J. Maddie. Interesting matchup. But again, as much as James Madison is the little short king, not a fan though. So we're going to go again with Charles Pinckney. Now, here's the interesting part. We're up against DeWitt Clinton and James Madison in the election of 1812. Now, here's the thing about the Federalists. I'm mostly a big fan of the Federalist Party until you get to 1812. Then it gets kind of murky on account of the fact that the war they weren't big fans of, and that led them to conspire for secession. And historically, I'm not a big fan of secession, so I have to vote for James Madison. But that's okay. He did some good stuff, Bill of Rights and so on and so forth. But it's better than leaving the Union. James Monroe. If you've seen my last video, you know I'm a big fan of James Monroe. This is called the era of good feelings for a reason, because he is super cool. We're voting James Monroe because I am going to be bandwagon in 1816. 1820. Who can we vote for? James Monroe. Am I complaining? No, I'm not. Because again, big fan of James Monroe. And here's a contentious one. The election of 1824. Well, 4 candidates this time: Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, William Crawford, and Henry Clay. As much as I think John Quincy has a great, interesting story, I do not know if I would vote for him. Mostly because I think I lean more towards Henry Clay's idea of basic American things, like the American system and other things. I vibe more with that than I do for John Quincy. He's really a Massachusetts man, a New England man, and you can see that in the election map. So that's why Henry Clay receives my vote in the election of 1824. Now, in the election of 1828, when it's only 2 people running, I have to go with John Quincy on account of the fact I will never vote for Andrew Jackson. Yes, you might be thinking, well, he gave you the right to vote. You're a guy who doesn't own property. Yes, but it's Andrew Jackson. He murdered 8 people before running for office, and everyone's just okay with that. And I find that utterly befuddling. But anyway, I vote for John Quincy, 1828. 1832, there's my boy, Henry Clay. And I would normally vote for Henry Clay, except one of my favorite niche political parties shows up. That's right, I'm not talking about the Nullifier party under John Floyd. I am talking about the anti-Masonic party under William Wirt. This party is all about fighting the Freemasons, which was it still is a cult thingy that a lot of rich and powerful people are in. And the only state to vote anti-Masonic was Vermont. And I love Vermont. Check out my state sandwich video on Vermont. And it's funny. So that's why, William, you're getting my vote for the anti-Masonic party in 1832. 1836. You thought 4 candidates was bad. Try 5 candidates. We have Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, Hugh White, Daniel Webster, and Willie Mongoon. 4 of which are variants of the Whig Party. But I have to go with my boy, Daniel Webster. Mostly on account of the fact that he, I think, expressed the ideas of the Whig Party more than other people. I think his thing was less about taking down Jackson, and also it had its own spin to it. Most people would vote William Henry Harrison because it's funny that he died a month into it, but also he's from Ohio. Like, sorry, Ohio. I have nothing against Ohio. It's just like it's Ohio. So Massachusetts, that was pretty cool. You may have a C-tier sandwich, but you have a excellent candidate in Daniel Webster for the election of 1836. Election of 1840, William Henry Harrison versus Sideburns Van Buren. And as much as I love Van Buren for speaking Dutch and his other various eccentricities, I have to vote for William Henry Harrison despite the fact he's from Ohio. Because, well, I can't vote for Martin Van Buren. And that's, like, on me. It's not even the facial hair. It's not even the fact that he's Dutch. It's mostly the Trail of Tears. Not a fan. But you move on. 1844. Normally, I would vote for Henry Clay. Except James K. Polk has a brilliant strategy for this election. He comes in saying, give me one term, I'm going to beat Mexico, I'm going to expand America. And what does he do? He comes in, he beats Mexico, he expands America, and then he leaves. And that's the kind of politician we need more of today. They come in with one focus, they get it done, and then they go. It's not a career thing for them. They're not trying to win votes. They're there to do something. And that's why I would be voting for James K. Polk. Election of 1848. Definitely not voting for Martin Van Buren's Free Soiler Party. So sadly, I have to vote for Zachary Taylor's Whig Party, like most of America, because, I mean, I can't vote the Democratic Party under Lewis Cass. And the Free Soilers, you might be thinking, oh, they have a good platform, they're against slavery, and they are. They got the right answer by using the wrong equation, because they're like the racist abolitionists. So that's why I'm voting the Whig Party under Zachary Taylor, and I'm just going to have to live with that. But now you get to 1852. Widely considered to be America's hottest president, Franklin Pierce. Do I vote for him? No. Did I go see his grave? Yes. But as a fan of American military history, and especially the Mexican-American War, I have to vote for Winfield Scott. I mean, the man basically ran the entire war, and he beat up Mexico so hard that we stole half their land. So that's why I'm voting for Winfield Scott, despite the fact he's from New Jersey. He's getting my vote in 1852. 1856. Oh, 1856. First Republican candidate to run, actual Republican, under John Fremont against James Buchanan. However, neither of these are getting my vote, as I am voting for the Know Nothing Party, purely on name alone. Their platform is fine, but the candidate Millard Fillmore is fine, but the Know Nothing Party, that is branding, that is marketing, that is so solid that he's definitely getting it. Okay, Millard Fillmore, 1856. Now we move on to America's most contested election, the election of 1860. Okay, 4 candidates, very clear choice. Stephen Douglas, no. Sorry, Northern Democratic Party, under his system of popular sovereignty, that's bogus, not gonna fly. He's just trying to build railroads through Nebraska. John Bell, can we all just work this out? No, we can't, John. The Constitution Party, really? Dumb. John Breckinridge, no. No, that man is so racist. Which leads me to the pride and joy of my very own home state, Abraham Lincoln, the land of Lincoln. So that's why clearly I'm voting for Abraham Lincoln in the election of 1860. Election of 1864, not much has changed. Abraham Lincoln. You really think I'm going to vote for George McClellan? Do you understand how terrible he was in the war? He did so bad. He never attacked anyone. He was so scared, even when he outnumbered people. And that's why he's not going in. Abe, with his, Republican, the National Unity Party, but, the Republican Party. So we're voting Abe. We're keeping him in. Moving on to 1868. And I am very easily electing Ulysses S. Grant. You could say I'm a radical Republican, but I'm all for Reconstruction. That's right. You fix those states, you military occupy the South, and that's what it's all about. I know I'm not a big fan of Grant as a person, but it all works out in the end. the election of 1872, a tad contentious. But there's one candidate I am voting for, and it may not be the most popular one, but I am voting for Victoria Woodhull with the Equal Rights Party. Frederick Douglass was her vice presidential candidate. Did he show up? No. Did he want to? No. But a woman running for president in 1872 with Frederick Douglass as her unofficial VP. As a person who took women's studies, that is a solid choice for president. And if there's anything you need in 1872, it's equal rights. So that's why I'm going Victoria Woodhull, 1872. And now we move on to America's centennial election, the election of 1876. And guess what? The South is demilitarized by this election, which the South may view as great, and the North, well, that's Rutherford B. Hayes, which I don't like. In fact, I will vote for a Democrat in this election. I'm voting for Samuel Tilden on account of the fact of how much I do not like Rutherford B. Hayes. Also, he's from Ohio again. So, you know my thoughts already. Samuel Tilden all the way, and that's a fact. 1880, James Garfield versus Winfield Hancock. As much as James Garfield is in fact from Ohio, I have nothing against him. James Garfield very clearly gets my vote in this election. Also because his running mate's Chester A. Arthur. I love Chester A. Arthur. He has the long mustachio that connects to his mutton chops, and that was fashion in 1880, purely on the mustache alone. And Garfield's beard isn't bad. Also, he's named after the cat Garfield, which is an interesting choice, but you know. Election of 1884. Grover Cleveland versus James Blaine. Here's my issue with Grover Cleveland. It's the bow tie. It's a spotted bow tie. And I don't know how to feel about that. Also, James Blaine is from Maine, and Maine and Blaine rhyme. So why would you not vote for him? That is hilarious. So, James Blaine gets the vote. Election of 1888. Benjamin Harrison. Ooh. Here's the thing. Benjamin Harrison is nasty. I do not like Benjamin Harrison. That man, his wife died, and then he married his niece, and his kids stopped talking to him. He did this as the president. So, sadly, I have to vote for Grover Cleveland and his terrible, terrible bow tie. It's a sad day. It's a sad election cycle, let me tell you. But I'm not voting for Benjamin Harrison. Oof. The election of 1892. Benjamin Harrison is back, along with Grover Cleveland. And so is the Populist Party. Yes, the Populist Party. Under James Weaver. They're all about bimetallism of silver and farmers' rights. And that's pretty cool with me. I'm a big fan of sticking it to the big companies. You can call me a populist, I guess. So, James Weaver gets my vote. He's from Iowa, which is pretty funny. Just for him. Bada bing, bada boom. Populist Party. The election of 1896. William McKinley versus William Jennings Bryan. Now, the Populist Party has now been absorbed into the Democratic Party, and William Jennings Bryan is the most popular advocate. Now, if I read The Wizard of Oz correctly, I know William McKinley is the evil wizard man. So, due to that, I'm voting William Jennings Bryan with the Populist Democratic Party against William McKinley. But now we move on to the election of 1900. And you think, oh, William Jennings Bryan's running against William McKinley again. You're going to vote for William Jennings Bryan, but no. Because Spanish-American War, a brilliant success for the United States, and a war hero is born out of it. The hero of San Juan Hill. And the vice presidential candidate under William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt himself. And thus, I am voting William McKinley in the election of 1900. 1904. Very clearly, it's Teddy Roosevelt. He's my favorite president by far, and he is getting my vote. And most of America would agree, unless you're from the South. But then again, there was the Democratic Party in the early 1900s, so makes sense. And now, here we are again. The hand-picked successor of Teddy Roosevelt in 1908, William Howard Taft, against the returning William Jennings Bryan. His populist streak has decreased compared to Taft, and thus, I will probably vote Taft on the mustache and the fact that if Roosevelt says he's cool, then I guess he's cool. 1908, my vote goes to Taft. And now, a world-changing election, the election of 1912. So, of course, I'm going with my main man, Teddy Roosevelt of the Progressive Bull Moose Party. That's right, I have a shirt for Teddy Roosevelt. Why would you not have a shirt? And you might be thinking, so your second place is Taft? No. This party has 4 candidates. Teddy Roosevelt with the Progressive Bull Moose Party, Taft with the Republicans, Wilson with the Democrats, and Eugene Debs, the American Socialist Party. And I, of course, am picking Teddy Roosevelt. My second place would go to Eugene Debs with the American Socialist Party. And last place is obviously Woodrow Wilson. And he only won with all the votes being split. It's a sad day for America when Woodrow Wilson becomes president. If only Teddy got his 3rd term. The Progressive Bull Moose Party is still my favorite American political party. And it's sad to see it go. In the election of 1916. Of course, you have Woodrow Wilson against Charles Evan Hughes. I cannot vote for Woodrow Wilson, and I will be voting Charles Evan Hughes because he looks like the bad guy from the first Hunger Games movie, and I think that's funny. Also, Woodrow Wilson is Satan's BFF, so you can't vote for him, and that's no bueno. So, Charles Evan Hughes, 1916. Will he keep us out of war? Hopefully. Hopefully. World War I, not fun. Why did America join? Because Wilson was paid in the back pockets by the people who invested in Britain. It's a different topic for a different time. But anyway, Woodrow Wilson, stinky, bad. The election of 1920, however, is a little more nuanced. You, of course, have Warren Harding, who I'm not a fan of, to James Cox, who I'm also not a fan of. However, their vice presidential candidates, Calvin Coolidge and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 2 of the greatest presidents of all time. However, I think Calvin Coolidge is the clear choice. And we're going with good old Calvin for the election of 1920. 1924, or, well, 24. Our next election is 2024. And thus in 1924, we have a pretty interesting election. Of course, you have John Davis with the Democrats, Calvin Coolidge with the Republicans, with Charles Dawes as his running mate. Yeah, remember Dawes from the Dawes Plan back in World War I to build Europe back up? That's pretty solid. And one other candidate, Robert LaFontaine. I love Robert LaFontaine. I think he was a great politician for Wisconsin. He is an avid socialist, and he's part of the Progressive Party. And I would normally vote for him in any other presidential cycle. However, it's Calvin Coolidge. It's Calvin Coolidge. So I kind of am obligated to vote for my second favorite president. And as much as I love Robert LaFontaine and I love his Progressive Party, it is not what we're looking for, sadly, when you're going up against good boy Calvin. Maybe next time, Robert. But sadly, 1924, I have to go with the home son of Vermont, Calvin Coolidge. Moving on to 1928, though, we have Herbert Hoover versus Al Smith. Now, I always say Hoover sometimes gets a bad rap. He wasn't a great president, but he wasn't terrible. But Al Smith has maybe the funniest campaign slogan of all time. Prohibition is going on. And what does he do? He says, I'm done with America being a dry country. America needs to step into the future and forward. So he says, I'll make all your wet dreams come true. And if that's not a presidential campaign slogan, I don't know what is. Al Smith, 1928. All my wet dreams are coming true. Except they didn't, because Hoover won. And then again, you get to the election of 1932. Very clearly, I'm voting Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Why would I ever vote for Herbert Hoover when Roosevelt was the clear choice here? So much so they passed an amendment so that he could get into office faster. 1936, Roosevelt versus Alf Landon. If anyone plays Hearts of Iron 4, you've definitely seen this election before. And as much as I love the alternate history path and that focus tree to reestablish the gold standard, I am going to go with FDR as he is the clear choice for who should run the country in 1936. The election of 1940, a little more contentious than the election of 36, but again, FDR is the clear candidate. Wendell Winkley is fine, but the real reason I'm a big fan of FDR in this election is Henry Wallace is his running mate, and Henry Wallace was such a cool dude. He was a Progressive Party member and would eventually be one of America's greatest vice presidents. However, that trend does not continue in the election of 1944. We have FDR and Truman. I like Truman. I do think Wallace would have been a better vice president, but I understand people thought he was a socialist back in the day, which is not a great look. But I would, again, in all four of these elections, vote for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. However, in 1948, that's going to change. When you have Truman versus Dewey, I would most likely vote for Thomas Dewey. Truman, looking back, had some good ideas. However, at the time in 1948, he wasn't seen as the most popular candidate. In fact, there's that famous picture of him holding up the fact that he lost the election to Thomas Dewey when he didn't. And I personally think Thomas Dewey might have done a better job, and I think he had a better campaign overall. So I would be voting Thomas Dewey in 1948. Sorry if you're a Strom Thurmond fan, in general, not because I didn't vote for him, but sorry you think he's a good person. That must be tough for you. The election of 1952. Dwight versus Adlai Stevenson. I might vote for Adlai Stevenson because he's from Illinois and his name is Adlai Stevenson. But Eisenhower, that man gets stuff done. He's a World War II war hero. He had great ideas on how to run America in the 1950s when we were the hegemon of the world. And that's why Eisenhower clearly gets my vote in 1952. And now we're into 1956. Same people. Eisenhower killed his first term so well. You bet I'm voting for him again in 56. And now it's the election of 1960. John F. Kennedy versus Richard Milhous Nixon. Tricky Dick himself. And I wonder who I'm going to vote for. Wow, this must be a pretty crazy question. It's clearly Kennedy. Like most of America, I really enjoy John F. Kennedy as a person. Or, I could just do what my grandma did and said he's a very attractive young man. Which is why she voted for him in that very same election. But John F. Kennedy gets my vote. 1960. Then you get to election of 1964. Oh God. You have Lyndon Baines Johnson, who I'm not the biggest fan of, compared to Barry Goldwater. Oh God. As much as I do not like LBJ, Barry Goldwater is a big no. That man is yikes, big yikes. So that's why Lyndon Baines Johnson gets my vote in 1964. The election of 1968, you have Richard Nixon versus Hubert Humphrey versus George Wallace. Yes, that George Wallace, the segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever kind of guy, who's a strong no from me. Richard Nixon, despite his vice president being Spiro Agnew, which is the funniest name ever, is also going to be a no from me. But Hubert Humphrey is going to be my pick because he was maybe a better politician than Lyndon Baines Johnson in terms of policy and other things. So I'm going to go for Hubert Humphrey over Segregation Man and Law and Order Milhous. Now time for the election of 1972. Oh, it's a sad day for most people. This is a landslide election for Nixon. But George McGovern, as a person who went to South Dakota and saw the Corn Palace, well, they really care about George McGovern out there. And as much as I hate South Dakota, well, I like South Dakota better than Tricky Dick. So, sadly, with a heavy heart, I will have to vote George McGovern. Now, you might be thinking, oh, why don't you vote for the libertarian guy with his woman vice president? Yeah, he's a libertarian in 1972. That's going to be a no from me. So George McGovern is sadly my pick. The second centennial, the bicentennial election, 1976. Jimmy Carter versus Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford ends up pardoning Nixon, and that will cost him this election. And have you met Jimmy Carter? Jimmy Carter, a peanut farmer from Georgia. I am for sure voting for Carter. Love Jimmy Carter. Put solar panels on the White House in 1976. What an absolute legend of a man. Jimmy, you're getting my vote. Now, the election of 1980. Ronnie Boy shows up. Ronald I Forget Gay People Exist Reagan versus Jimmy Carter and John P. Anderson from Illinois. I would like to vote John Anderson because it would be funny, but Jimmy Carter, despite the OPEC oil embargo, has to get my vote because I definitely cannot vote for Ronnie Boy, and John Anderson's just funny. But of course, Jimmy, all for him. My boy, he's still living, still kicking. Jimmy, if you're watching this, call me. Pretty cool dude. But now you move on to 84. Ugh. Ronald Reagan versus Walter Mondale. Minnesota's very own Walter Mondale. And again, I'm not voting for Reagan. Who would vote for Reagan? People always glorify the 80s and be like, oh, I love the 80s. Let's do an 80s throwback party. I'm like, people voted for Ronald Reagan unironically. Why do people love the 80s so much? That's why I'm voting for Walter Mondale in 1984. Speaking of the 80s, we have 1988, which is George Herbert Walker Bush versus Michael Dukakis. Now you might be thinking, you're not going to vote for Bush. He was Reagan's VP. But Michael Dukakis. Have you met Michael Dukakis? That man drove around in a tank. Look at this. Look at this. Like, how am I supposed to vote for that? So, no. George Herbert Walker gets my vote in 1988. 1992. Oh yeah, where's all my millennials? Because only 90 kids will remember when Ross Perot ran for president. And yes, I'm voting for Ross Perot in 1992. Because you gotta balance that budget. I know Bill Clinton said he was gonna do it too, but I don't like Bill Clinton. He's kind of a creepy dude. Not a fan. And I would normally vote for George Herbert Walker, but Ross Perot just like does all the stuff H-Dub does, but like without all the war. So that's pretty solid. Ross Perot, you get my vote. And oh, what a surprise. Here we are back again. 1996. Who am I voting for? Ross Perot. Take that, Bill and Bob. Ross is where it's at. Reform Party. He knows what's up. Finally, we enter the new millennium. The dawn of the millennium ends with George G-Dubs up against Al Gore. And I'm very clearly going to vote for Al Gore. As much as I love G-Dubs as a person, I think he's funny. And I think he's a nice guy. At the end of the day, I don't think he was the right guy for the job. And I think Al Gore would have done a better job. And thus Al Gore gets my vote in the election of 2000. However, 2004 comes along. You have John Kerry. I have nothing against John Kerry. I just think, look at his face. He's just, yeah. So that's why George W. Bush is actually getting my vote, because John Kerry looks like a caricature of a person, and that scares me. Now, on to 2008. Barack Obama versus John McCain. I really do like John McCain. I think he's a great person. I think he did a lot of great things, but his vice president, Sarah Palin. So, like many people in 2008, I'm voting for Barack Obama. Also because Obama's a really cool guy. I'm a big fan. He promised a lot. He made a great campaign. It was all about hope and doing a whole bunch of great stuff. Did he do it? Not really. And that comes in 2012. I am voting for Barack Obama yet again. There are good things about Mitt Romney that I like, but Yeah, Obama, I think, overshadows any good things about Mitt. He does look like Mr. Fantastic, though, and I think that's really funny. But Obama said he was going to be Mr. Fantastic, and he was just Mr. All right. But that's fine. That's fine. The election of 2016. Yikes. Big yikes. You have Donnie Boy and Hillary Rodham Clinton. Two people I do not like at all. And thus, like a decent chunk of electors, I will not be voting for them. Fun fact, this election had the most faithless electors in U.S. history. People voting for everyone from Bernie Sanders to Colin Powell to my personal favorite and my choice. I would do a write-in vote for Faith Spotted Eagle, the first Native American woman to ever receive a electoral vote. And she would kill it. Honestly, we had a Native American president. I know she's from South Dakota, but like technically she's part of the Sioux Nation. She's not really part of South Dakota. So that's why Faith Spotted Eagle gets my vote in 2016, because the two other options are terrible. And now we are here. The election that caused a lot of violence in this country. And we're still dealing with the outcome today. The election of 2020. Donnie Boy coming back against Delaware's own Joseph R. Biden. Do I like Joe Biden? No. Do I think he is better than Trump? Yes. And that's why I would vote for Joe Biden. Do I have any affection towards him? No. Do I care about his life? Not really. As a person, he's like a mini wheat. He's boring and crunchy. He's just so much better than the other option. So that's why I'm picking Joe Biden. Well, there you have it. Another President's Day passed, and another 59 elections voted in. As you can see by my graph, I have voted for a lot of different parties, with the highest being the Federalist Party, the Democrats, and the Republicans. I voted Democrat 19 times, Republican 16 times, and Federalist 5 times, Whig 4 times, and a variety of other political parties only once. But as you can see, throughout American history, the parties flip and flop, and the people change, and the country grows. But through it all, there are people with ideas that want to make the country a better place. It is up to us, as the public, to vote for them. And it is important to vote and to protect those inalienable rights, to go to the polls and make your voice heard in our democratic process in the republic that is the United States of America. Have a wonderful President's Day, and I hope now that the dislike button is gone, this video will maybe get a better perception than my tier list. Just remember, Woodrow Wilson is still the worst.